You're listening to Arsenal Pass, a flesh and blood podcast for players by players. And all about strategy, leveling up, and the latest news in the world of Wraith. Welcome to Arsenal Pass.
Hello everyone and welcome back to episode 243 of Arsenal Pass. Hayden here with Pankaj Bhojwani. As always, this week on the pod, we are talking the best cards. We are talking the worst cards. We are talking our favourite cards. We are talking our least favourite cards in 2025. Of course, as Pankaj likes to say, it's all subjective, of course. There's definitely no objectivity in this conversation. It'll all be a very fair scale. We'll talk more about how we will decide the best and worst cards of the year. But first of all, Pankaj, how you doing?
I'm doing all right, except I just learned that you never listen to anything I say because I've always claimed that we are super objective here, especially as we round out the year with our retrospectives on the product releases and the cards that came out in 2025.
You've got to be honest. You got to be honest with the people. You know what I'm saying?
Yeah, I'm doing well. Just got back from India a few days ago. Was there for a cousin's wedding. Really enjoyed the pod you did last week with Matt Dilks and Michael Yaskor. That was a fun listen.
Yeah, I mean, it's good to have the boys on, and two World Championship finalists. I got to ask them my favorite question, which is, what was it like playing the final against a teammate? I can't imagine that is a question that we'll get to ask very often. To be honest, I mean, I hope so. That's a fantastic result, but yeah.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
So this week on the pod, as we said, we are talking the top, bottom, best, worst, favorite, least favorite cards of 2025, backing into our retrospective for the year, as Pankaj has spoken about over the last couple of weeks, something that we wanted to end the year with a bang and really reflect back on the year. And we talk a lot during the year about the what ifs and the let's see how this plays out and our thoughts and theories. But we're taking December to look back at some of those predictions, maybe some of those calls that we made. People like to check in to see if we got things right, Pankaj, or if we were, wrong, to be honest.
Yeah.
And in this episode, we are going to go through our top 5, bottom 5 cards. We're going to talk through our criteria for how we each arrived at this, and then we will talk through, I think it'd be great if we can come to a number 1, maybe. Or, at least we can kind of compromise and decide of what we think could be the 1 or 2 best and worst of the year. So we'll get into all that. No, I guess, normal structure to the pod this week. We don't have a Command Cookout question, but if you do want to get your questions in for the Command Cookout, you should definitely do so. You can drop them in the YouTube comments below. Let us know it is a Command Cookout question. You can email us, arsenalpassfab@gmail.com. You can drop us a note. You'll see Pankaj in person. If you're in Seattle this coming weekend, he'll be there for the calling. I won't be, but that's fine. You can still get into Pankaj. Otherwise, you can questions on Spotify. If you're a Spotify listener, you can drop it in the comments there. I think that's covering most of the ways you can get questions to us. If you're an Arsenal Pass patron, you can drop it in the Patreon Discord. That said, I want to jump into the news, I guess, Pankaj. And there's only really one thing that I want to talk about this week in the news, and that's the Dev Talk that released last week. I'd say the Dev Talks have been they've been more frequent. They've been happening less frequently than they have been in the past, but I would say the punch they pack and the impact they have has only increased with that. And this week the Dev Talk was Brian and it was James, and it was a bit of an update on Flesh and Blood, really. It was a bit of a how are we doing to end the year, and they spoke about a lot of things on this Dev Talk. If you haven't gone and had a listen, I recommend it. I think the transparency that James and Brian have as the leads within Legend Story Studios and the designers and the developers and what they're doing is just fantastic. And they spoke a lot about formats, which we'll dive into in a second. I have a couple of questions for you, Pankaj, but they also spoke about, a little bit of a tease for 2026 and what's to come. So, but most of the conversation was focused around formats. And I think let's just jump into it and break this down a little bit. They spoke first of all about Blitz and Living Legend. And what is the future for Blitz and Living Legend? And as we know, the last skirmish season with Blitz has been taking place, and Blitz will rotate out of the skirmish format. And Living Legend has been a bit of a point of contention to an extent, right, Pankaj? It was something that the community has been really divided on, and then Worlds was kind of interesting because I think at Worlds it showcased what a good Living Legend format can look like. So what they've come down to is effectively Blitz and Living Legend for the time being are going to take a back seat next year. There'll be no Tier 3, Tier 4s with Blitz or Living Legend, but there will be something to come that they're calling kind of an eternal celebration weekend where, and we'll get into the changes to Blitz in a second, but where Living Legend will definitely show up and Blitz will show up at least once in the year, but we don't really know what that looks like. Did you have any thoughts about that, Pankaj, or were you surprised to hear that?
I was not surprised to hear that. I think we all saw it coming, right? The writing was on the wall that they are backseating Blitz and
Sunsetting.
Living Legend. Sunsetting, yes, not moonlighting. Yes, thank you for that.
but they kind of aren't sunsetting, I guess, Living Legend. Like Blitz, they definitely are, and there's some changes they're making, which we'll talk about in a second. But Living Legend, it's like, I think they were actually kind of happy with how it ended up playing out. They just kind of spoke about the fact they don't have the resources to manage that format, plus Silver Age, plus Classic Constructed, plus, of course, work on limited formats.
Right, so they are sunsetting it for now, right? At least that's the way I took it. But I do like that they both acknowledged that it did end up being a success at Worlds. Because that's something I felt too, which again, like you pointed out, is a little bit controversial.
It's contentious.
Yeah, many people disagree. But I do think it turned out very well at the World Championships, which was awesome for sure. Blitz, yep, a bunch of changes. And yeah, the celebration weekend. I mean, my interpretation was it would be like sort of like the anniversary, like every year around that time. Maybe they start having a few more events that have Blitz and Living Legend. Because they said the purpose of that would be sort of celebrating the history of Flesh and Blood, right? Of which Blitz and Living Legend are both like a part of now. So I took it as like maybe around the anniversary time we get maybe some armories, maybe something a little bit higher.
Maybe a calling?
Maybe.
But then they said this
that
won't be part of
it.
Yeah, they said it won't be part of it. So I assume it's going to be more in-store events, special promos right attached to that. Get in and play these two formats this week or this month and get your promos.
It could be something like, remember, like when we did the goodbye to Welcome to Wraith kind of thing. Like, imagine it could be like that sort of vibe. But those were really fun events.
They were amazing.
We didn't really have that vibe again. Like, they never did a goodbye to like Arcane Rising or anything after that. But the goodbye to Welcome to Wraith sort of vibe was. It was fun to go to a store and just like draft that set again. It was awesome. Because I mean, I wasn't there when it was originally out, right? So it was fun to like just go do that. And I think it could remain like. Coming back to Blitz or coming back to LL could hold that sort of place for newer players who come to the game who weren't there to experience Blitz and Living Legend when they were, current formats. And could just very much have that same vibe of like a celebration of the history of Flesh and Blood, as they said.
Yeah, that would be my guess as well. And I think that'd be fantastic. I want to get on to the Blitz change because although Blitz is sort of taking a backseat for this year, there's some massive changes happening to Blitz. Basically, it's being reinvented as a format to an extent, but they didn't spend a lot of time talking about it, and I think for good reason, for the fact that it's not going to be a focus for them this year. So there is going to be a change. It's going to show up at this celebration weekend at some point. It's now going to be a singleton format. So, and everything's legal. So scrapping the Living Legend for Blitz, you can play any of the heroes. All the cards are legal, but it's singleton only, so you can only play one copy of any individual card. That means you could play, if there's a cycle, you can play the one red, the one yellow, the one blue. That's fine, but you can only play one of each card. This is so interesting because I remember going to a Blitz skirmish once, and Sasha Markovic, who many people will know, former calling champion and multiple time calling champion, and top 8 first pro tour, actually worked for LSS for a while in design, actually showed up to a skirmish once and played a singleton Kano deck at a skirmish and won the skirmish, which was hilarious. And I was like, oh, it's quite fun. It was quite fun watching him play and the deck he had built. So it's quite cool to see that actually we're going to get something like that. I mean, it doubles the amount of cards maximum that you have in the deck, like unique cards, which I think is quite cool. So yeah, I don't know. What do you think? I mean, it's I guess it's minor in a way because we're not really going to see it, but it's interesting at least.
Yeah, I haven't engaged in Blitz in a very long time. But my initial take is that if everything is unbanned, I mean, the Wizards are just unbeatable, right? Stormstriders in a 20 health format is just insane. Like I remember, like the full Arcane Icelander, like when it was legal in Blitz, was just like winning everything, and it was really difficult to beat because yeah, it's just so much true damage, and then they also have like 10 life on you because of Stormstriders plus the hero ability plus Waning Moon. But again, it's not really about the balance, right? So
Definitely
I'm just not entirely sure what space Blitz is gonna be in. Speaking of that, by the way, we sort of skipped the This Week in Flesh and Blood sort of thing. Did you make it out to any skirmish?
No, I assume none of us played Flesh and Blood this weekend. I did not play any Flesh and Blood this weekend.
No, I didn't play it, but my week in Flesh and Blood was just being on the Breakpoints podcast, by the way. Huge shout out to them. Go check out that episode if you would like. But it was fun to be on the pod as a guest on that show. At the same time, I think Taylor Crawford transferred some of his brain rot over to me, and I'm actually considering Marlin for Seattle this weekend. So, a bit of a double-edged sword. Yeah, I need someone to beat the cope out of me.
I didn't realize it was a living legend calling.
Anyway.
That's crazy, man. Yeah, so that's interesting, but I guess it's not huge. In terms of some of the other things they spoke about and moved on to, they spoke about Silver Age for quite a reasonable amount of time, and were both Brian and James really hammered home how important Silver Age is to them as a studio, how focused they are on it, how important it's going to be in 2026 in particular, and beyond, as something that's very unique in the TCG industry in terms of allowing people to get into a competitive scene at a very low cost, right? Which is usually not something that game studios want to do, to be honest. And that they're really proud of particularly the Silver Age pre-constructed decks that are coming in the first part of the year in terms of out of the box, ready to play at a competitive event. So I don't know. What did you think of what they spoke about in Silver Age? Anything that stood out to you in particular as they jumped into this section of their dev talk?
So 2 things. The first one, which, isn't too big of a deal. I think a lot of people probably saw this coming too, but Silver Age is looking to be the replacement for Commoner, which is a good little tidbit. The other one that really stood out to me is that they were talking about how there was basically no development time on Silver Age as it is today.
Correct.
Like, to them, all their development was done with Silver Age post Compendium coming out. I think that is that was a very important tidbit, a nugget of information for me, because like currently as people are exploring Silver Age, like right now, I think the format does have quite a few problems. So it was quite reassuring to hear that this was absolutely not intended, and we will get the intended version of Silver Age as it was in development only after Compendium. And the whole reason we're having Silver Age events right now is just because of the demand for it, which I think is really, really cool.
Yeah.
They just responded to player feedback and store feedback, and were like, people want to start playing Sage. All right, let's just get it out there. They can play in this like what we developed on format and have fun with it, I guess. But the intended way to like play it or engage with the format happens after Compendium, and I enjoyed getting that information.
Yeah, I think to me that was... I thought that was kind of known. Like I think that was kind of clear in terms of that was what because they hadn't mentioned that it was sort of sneak peek events to a degree. These are early Silver Age events coming at the end of the year rather than Silver Age launching. The launch is from Compendium. I thought that was like quite clear at the keynote for Worlds in terms of how they spoke to that and the events coming. But I agree. I think continuing to make sure that people are aware of that, because I think there's been a decent amount of criticism of like, I hope Compendium fixes this format, or I hope they put more time and effort into it. And I think the format, from what I've seen in the couple of games I've played, honestly seems fine right now. But I can understand that there's some things that the game, the format seems quite fast. We spoke about it the other week, right? The format and its current sort of iteration. But yeah, in terms of when that gets to its final form, so to speak, or it's at least its evolved form, it won't be until the release of Compendium. And I think that was the other thing they spoke about, which was bans. They are going to continue to use the ban list actively and actively manage the ban list in Silver Age for a balancing. And we're, really wanted to make sure fans of the game and players that they knew that the hero voting is a rotation. That's what it's about. And we spoke about it in the pod last week, about that. It's a rotation mechanic, not a banning or a balancing mechanic. And that's always what, I guess, Living Legend or the equivalent of rotating has been for them.
But they also said that they're going to be responding to the heroes that get banned or come back in with the ban list, which is very interesting. But they're like, okay, this hero's coming back for the season now. They've been out for 2 of them. what can we ban from them to like keep them around, or like, you know, what should we ban from them so that they can re-enter the format in a way that is perhaps desirable, which is interesting. Speaking of the bans, I think it hinted that we're going to have a season first of Silver Age before any votes happen for the hero bannings, which makes sense. I think some people will try and predict how the first season of bannings would work, because we have like no information. So like, what would we vote on? Just vibes, I guess.
Yeah, you got to play the game first. You got to play first.
Yeah, so I think the first season is just going to be no bans at all, or maybe just a dev ban. I'm not sure. But it seems like the votes will only start happening after the first season. So the first season is a little bit of a anything goes sort of thing.
If they've played in testing, though, in development with Compendium, I imagine they have a view of maybe some cards that could be problematic. So I would expect a Silver Age potential ban list update.
Well, an update, because we already have that, right? We already have a bunch of cards in Silver Age.
Yeah, we do. But I imagine I could see us getting a update to the ban list once Compendium drops and the format heads into the ProQuest season, and then Heroes happening at the end of that first season would be my assumption based on what we know today.
Yeah.
What did you... We spoke... The other two formats they spoke about was Limited and Classic Construct. I'm glad they spoke about Limited because, you know, as someone who is a massive lover of and enjoyer of Limited, it is a bit disappointing to me that I effectively don't get to play any Flesh and Blood Limited, and at least in a competitive way, or honestly even in an armory, because usually if a format isn't a competitive format, it's not a ProQuest format, it's not a tier 3 or higher format, people don't want to play the format. So, you know, the last time I drafted Flesh and Blood was High Seas in Singapore, right? And it's a bit sad for me to go, you know, 4 or 5 months without playing draft, and that's obviously going to continue with Compendium. It's not a limited set, but they did speak about the fact that Limited is returning. They're focused on Limited. They do want draft and Limited to be a part of their game, but they also want it to be its best, and they want to make sure that it doesn't mean that they are forced to design sets in particular ways to always have Limited, that they want to have that option. And this is something that Brian's spoken about before and just kind of doubled down on, that there was a promise that Limited's coming back. In terms of when that comes back, it's going to come back this year. Will it be in sequential sets? No promises, but I thought it was good to hear that Limited is coming back.
Did I miss here? I thought they said the next 4 sets all.
Oh, is it 4? I thought it was just the next couple. Is it 4 in a row? Okay. That might be true.
That's what I heard. I hope I'm not gaslighting you or like making things up.
Yeah, don't get me excited.
But
there definitely was the next couple. I wasn't sure if they'd said specifically 4, but that makes sense. But then there was like a kind of, but we might then not have Limited for 2 sets, or, you know, that might follow a similar kind of pattern. They didn't want to commit to a certain amount of Limited sets per year or anything like that, which is fine.
Yeah.
But I do want to play. I want to draft at a tier 4. I want to draft at a tier 3.
Yeah, I personally would have liked if they sort of, I guess maybe not committed, but maybe hinted at like over the year when we have our 3 sets, like 2 of them have Limited and 1 of them doesn't. And so we always have 1 tier 4 event that is like 2 constructed formats, maybe like a CC and a Sage. For example, 1 of the tier 4 events, like either a Worlds in a year or 1 of the Pro Tours. And then the other 2 are Limited and CC as we've gotten used to. I would have liked that as like a interesting structure to moving forward with the competitive scene, but if we're going to get next 4 in a row Limited, means that I guess every tier 4 event in the near future will have Limited, which is, I mean, still fine. I'm sure you're a big fan of that, but yeah, I think I wouldn't mind if it was a little bit more varied, because I really enjoyed the sort of the full constructed worlds that happened this past like last month.
Yeah.
And as we spoke about, I do think it was a success, and I think they do too. Yokohama maybe we'll end up there as well. I think it'll be nice to have, you know, 1 of the 3 tier 4s be constructed only.
Yeah. I mean, I just want the best formats to be played. So if that at one point is Limited, if we've got a great Limited format, awesome. Love it. If the Limited format is something that they don't feel is the best Limited experience, maybe it's a Super Slam equivalent or something, and they would prefer that, or they think that the excitement of 2 constructed formats is going to be better. It's going to be better for players. It's going to be more enjoyable for viewers. Yeah, go for it. You know, I think I like this idea that we kind of chop and change, but selfishly, I just want to play more Limited. But I get it. Mm-hmm. Classic constructed.
Overall, I think I like that they are just taking risks. I mean, we've said this about them in the past. They did do take the risks, and sometimes it pays off, sometimes it doesn't. But they're very fluid, and they continue to like change depending on what they perceive players want, or just what they want the story to be. Like the whole Super Slam thing, where they're like, that is limited here, but we don't think it's good enough, so we're just not going to have it for Worlds. And I just do like that agility.
Class Constructed. They also, just to briefly touch on to end, they spoke about Class Constructed, of course, being the main love of Flesh and Blood. It's always going to continue to be, at least for now, that number one format. They spoke about the fact that they'll continue to use the ban list as a tool and many purposes for that ban list, in terms of course, balancing the format, but also, as we head to Roast National season, they acknowledge the conversation and the community and the discourse around, and we spoke about it last week in the pod with Matt Dilks and Michael Yazka. Do we need a ban heading into January to freshen the format up for Roast Nationals? They spoke about that specifically. I got the feeling, Pankaj, that that's exactly what they're going to do, or at least potentially unban something. James spoke about unbannings as well. What were your thoughts on the conversation on Class Constructed, and do you think we're getting a ban and suspended announcement?
I think they pretty much declared that there will be a BNR
without saying
that's
it.
More than no changes. They pretty much admitted that that's going to happen. And I think with James White's hint as well, like my take is that there's going to be at least one unbanning in the BNR on the 15th as well. What was interesting to me is that they basically also admitted that this might be the best CC format ever. And I do... Like this, if this is not the best, it's definitely up there as one of the best.
It's
like,
the healthiest, at least, I would say.
Yeah, like this, it definitely reminds me quite a bit of like the heavy hitters meta, which is I think one of my favorite metas of all time. Which is there's so many viable decks. There's a few at the top, but the differences between the top decks and the next tier isn't that high, and you can do all sorts of weird things. You have a lot of deck building considerations. It was a lot about understanding matchups and tailoring your deck to suit certain needs. I thought that was awesome, and I get a lot of those the same feels for this format as well. So to hear them basically say this is probably one of the best CC formats of all time, but also we're gonna ban something, was interesting. It definitely goes towards the ideal that I don't know, players are bored and like players want like constant churn in the formats, which I guess is fair, but I guess, looking at Valencia, for example, I do feel like there is still churn happening. It's like slower now, obviously, because the format has had quite a bit of time to mature. But like Mario is, for example, coming up right now, and it's on the up and up, and it's getting more and more traction. And is that going to cause maybe a shift, like organically in a sense, like without a ban? Like, I don't know. I feel like I personally don't like the idea that, there's nothing that is egregious and being problematic, but we're still going to ban something or unban something. I'm not too a big fan of the idea of a shakeup for the sake of a shakeup. Is I guess my take.
Well, it's not for the sake of a shakeup. It's to give freshness to players, right, and to allow them to explore a change in a format. Like I think that is a perfectly valid reason.
Isn't that the same thing as a shakeup? Like, isn't that a shakeup for the shake?
I don't know. It just felt very. I don't know. The way you said a shakeup for the sake of a shakeup just felt very like it doesn't mean anything, and I think it means something to a lot of players and a lot of people, myself included. I think personally, I have very minimal desire to play this format right now because it's to me it's stale. It hasn't changed, and when we don't have set releases around competitive windows, I think something's got to be done because. It just, to me, that's part of the game, is adapting to metagames, adapting to change. That is part of what Flesh and Blood is at a competitive level in Constructed. So, I am a big fan of their use of the ban as a tool for that. And they've clearly stated that they will continue to use, they are open to utilizing the ban and restricted list as a tool to freshen a format. So,
yeah. I fully agree that I'm in the minority with this, I believe. But anyway, do you have any wishes, maybe, on bans or unbannings?
I don't have any wishes in particular. I think my prediction, or I guess something that I thought they could do, was to hit Wrath of Retribution on the ban list, to hit something from Verdance. I wasn't sure what that would be. That one was a tougher one because probably whatever you hit probably hits Florian. So that's kind of tough. Like Fruits was the one thing that I thought of probably most. The other card, I think, if you're going to unban something, and the three of us spoke about this last week on the pod with Dilks and Yaska, was talk a big game. We never got to see it in action, and how egregious is that card? Why don't we find out? To be honest, and maybe especially if Verdance is going to be a big player in the format, Marionette as well. To your point, maybe you don't hit anything from Verdance. Maybe you let Marionette and Verdance become top decks, and you see what our brutes could do with Talk a Big Game, for instance, potentially our Guardians, right? So, I look at a deck like the Super Slam heroes, and I'm like, why don't we give them Talk a Big Game, see what they can do? So, yeah, that's my thoughts.
Yeah, I like the Talk a Big Game. I think looking at the list of bans, and given the hint that it might be an unbanning, I think the only reasonable unbans are Talk a Big Game, and then a bit lower than that is like Bonds of Agony, which to let like Slippy come back, let Syndra have a Predator. Although Slippy at Bonds of Agony, I know I did bring up Bonds of Agony, I think 2 weeks ago when we were talking about unbannings. I was like, Bonds of Agony, Talk a Big Game, just unban those and chill. The play patterns are just not very fun when Slippy has it in particular. Yeah. Like Mario having it, I think is fine, but Slippy having it is like weird.
Slippy also has new cards,
but
as well,
there was one
because of the Armory deck.
Armory deck, yeah.
So yeah.
There is one, though, that's been a bit of a spicy take. I think Noah Bagelman brought this up, like when he was on the Breakpoints pod, and then I think they also said on the Runaways pod, they were discussing it. What do you think of the Winter's Whale unbanning?
For Jarl?
Yeah.
Don't love it. Personally.
Why not?
I just don't think that weapon... I think that weapon is one of the most egregious weapons ever printed, and I just don't think there's a place for that. I don't think that's the sort of weapon I want to see in the game, honestly, personally.
That's fair. I was thinking about it, and I was like, I'm not even sure whether if you unban that, as I do agree with you, it's like one of the most powerful weapons we've seen. I'm not sure if that changes the meta, to be honest, because the rest of Jarl is still kind of whatever, right?
I agree. Is it? And even if it is, it's like even if it was enough, it would be, in my eyes, not the right thing I'd want to see for it to be enough. I think there's an example of this I'll talk about in my best and worst cards of the year, actually, which might be a nice segue to moving on to our main topic of the pod. Last thing they did shout out on the dev talk that I want to shout out is James reminding everyone that Aurora is coming back in 2026. So just to set the scene, let's all remember that card had an Armory deck released this year, or that hero had an Armory deck released this year, and also hit Living Legend this year, which is just a reminder of how far we've come this year.
Volthaven set? Bring
maybe.
Ice back?
Maybe.
Come on, Icelander with Aurora, please.
We'll see. All right, Pankaj, let's get into the main topic of the pod, and this is our best and worst cards of 2025. I'm going to let you, when you get to your first... Actually, let's do it now. I want to ask you, how did you arrive at this list? What was your criteria for your best and worst cards?
I had a very strict rule set of 3 rules, and I'm just kidding. It was just vibes. I think generally looking at lists, at least like my 5 best, and we'll talk about the worst ones later, but look at my 5 best, I think generally the sort of trend, like what I've noticed around the cards that I like, which is, like, I did kind of just go off vibes, being like, ooh, I did enjoy this. Generally what I liked was cards with an okay floor, and then a ceiling that was high after you jump through some hoops, but not an egregious level ceiling that feels like you just like win the game on the spot. Just like, oh, you got a lot more value than like one card should give you, but you had to go through some hoops that were reasonable to get there, and also the floor of that isn't so low that you're just playing this. There's just like not a season where the variance between like what you can get out of this card is like varies too much. So it's just like a nice little range between the floor and the ceiling of a card with reasonable hoops and something that doesn't feel too bad on the other side as well.
So just a really wide remit there. Nothing specific at all.
Yeah. Okay, you tell me then. What was your specific?
No. I was laughing because you're like, it's just kind of vibes, and then you had like very much like, it has to be in this window, not this. I would say
that's just looking back at my list. I realized that my cards sort of fall in that category. Yeah.
I would say I went with more vibes than that. I just went with, when it came to best cards, I think cards that have either had really big positive impact in the game this year, that I think have been well balanced, that players have enjoyed playing with or have been enjoyable to play against or with. Cards that I think are just really cool from a design aspect that I personally really enjoy. There's a mix of those things as well, and that I want to see more of this kind of thing in the future. And that's kind of my best cards. And then I'd say my worst cards were really cards that I thought were, not good for the game this year. Cards that had an impact that, to your point, was kind of outside of those bounds of what felt like nice design, whether it pushed something way too hard, or every time I did the groan test. Every time the card is played or, is used, it's like the, of course, sort of thing. That definitely factored into it. And then just things where I thought the design was just poor or wasn't in the right direction, I would say. So there's a real mix, honestly, of reasons I chose cards. And also, I don't have an order to these cards, Pankaj, so I'm just going to kind of list them based, again, on vibes as we talk.
Yeah, I don't have an order. Yeah, I don't have an order either. I do have, at least in my best category, I think I have like my one favorite, where I'm like, I think this sticks out. But for the 5 least favorite, I think, I don't really have an order to those either.
Okay, I think I might have a favorite card as well, potentially. So let's see I'm interested to see if we can get to a bit of not a consensus, but a compromise potentially on a number one best and worst. We'll see.
Mm-hmm. For my least favorite, the sort of my criteria, I guess that one definitely went a bit more on the vibes, or just the groan test that we were talking about. Also, when the ceiling is like egregiously high, I put that there. And then I have a couple where I was just like upset that these cards exist, basically. And we'll get to that.
All right. Should we get into, where do you want to start, best or worst?
Oh, definitely best. Okay. We have to end with worst, because that's what people want to hear the most.
Sure.
We need to make them listen to the whole pod for them to get to the worst. I guess they could skip ahead if they're lame like that, but most people need to sit through the best, and then they can hear our takes on the worst.
If you're a video watcher, I'm going to try and bring the cards up as we speak about them. Let's see how we go on that front. We won't do that for honorable mentions. Speaking of, do you want to list off some of your honorable mentions quickly before we get into best cards of the year, Pankaj? The cards that didn't make your top 5, but that you enjoyed this year.
Yeah, I had my list was like somewhere between 8 to 10 for both favorites and hated, and I had to cut cards down to 5. So I do have a few honorable mentions. For the best, I have 3 that I want to talk about. Retrace the Past, Overcrowded, and Null Time Zone are my honorable mentions. Wow. Retrace the Past, because I think it's just it's very similar to exactly like what I was talking about, where the floor is like decent, and then the ceiling, once you jump through some hoops, can get you something that's really, really good, but not to the point of being egregious. I think it opens up a lot of deck building and play lines for Katsu, and it is just so flavorful. It's sort of like Bonds of Ancestry-esque. There's the vibes of the Bonds of Ancestry stuff, but then it's just a little bit more tuned. And it's very fun to play as well. And I think it definitely passes the groan test as well. Although maybe only passes the groan test because the Katsu's not very good right now. Probably. But I think overall it's just satisfying to pull that off. And is a just good, solid upgrade for Katsu.
Mm-hmm. Any others you want to talk
about? Yeah, Overcrowd's awesome. I'm glad we've revisited like that ambush mechanic. It's again, same thing. The floor is like just fine, like blue block 2. You're not like super happy about it, but if your deck is configured correctly and in certain metas, like if we're in a Codex of Frailty meta or something, having a card like this is very, very strong. I just feel like it landed so well for me. The balance and how the card feels to play. Mm-hmm. Null Time Zone, I like cards like that. I like cards that reward you for knowing your opponent's deck and knowing, I guess, understanding the spots where you need to call certain cards. I like that card.
Cool.
I don't have too much more to say about it. I do enjoy the feel. Well, what are your honorable mentions?
I think that card's cool. I'm a fan of Null Time Zone. Mm-hmm. No overlaps on honorable mentions for me. I have 4, which I'll quickly just list off. I had Blood Runs Deep, Put in Context, Quick Dodge Flexes, and Sunken Treasure. So for me, I think Blood Runs Deep is kind of the card I do want to be playable. Like, it's super flavorful in terms of like throwing daggers. It has a cost reduction element, which I think is really interesting for Draconic. So that's the kind of card I want, as opposed to Wrath of Retribution, to be honest, to be playable in my Ninja decks. Put in Context is, I think, such a cool card as a defense reaction, a blue defense reaction that has these kind of restrictions to it, and is going to see play in certain formats and not in others. Exactly, it's powerful in the right setting. I think that's the kind of card I want to see. I enjoyed playing with it in Enigma at times earlier in the year when it was viable in that format. So, for instance, when Syndra first released, I think Quick Dodge Flexes is a cool generic legendary. I think that is something that is powerful, but is balanced, is something that can have impact in a format, and other times is going to be not particularly playable. Again, I like that. And then lastly, I had Sunken Treasure. I think as a pirate card, this card is so cool as an idea of, it has this kind of targeted interaction with your opponent to be able to impact their graveyard, but it can also generate you gold potentially, the interaction of that with Syndra, with daggers, for instance, but then you give up the ability to get your gold. So I really like that card. I think it's quite cool. It's blue, it's a 3-block. It's kind of I like blue 3-blocks that have utility, but in an interesting way, like put in context in Sunken Treasure, for instance.
Mm-hmm. And Quick Dodge Flexes too. Very defensive pieces you've picked. But
just
I like those.
Cards I like this year.
Those are nice.
All right, Pankaj, why don't you hit us with your first best of the year? Let's get into it.
All right. So again, no particular order to these 5. I'm just going to start with Oath of Loyalty. I really like this card. It kind of exactly what I was talking about, where the floor is decent. I mean, the floor is basically like a block 3, which is fine. But the ceiling, once you jump through those hoops, is you get a 0 for 4 go again, which is very strong. And a draconic starter as well. So once you jump through those hoops, you get this like sweet payoff. But then there's moments where you draw it and you're like, this actually doesn't really work with me with what I want to do right now. Especially when you draw it, like if say playing Syndra and you draw it off your Ancestral Empowerment and you draw this card, you're like, this can't. I literally can't even play this card. But the turns where you get to start with it feel very, very strong. So it just landed perfectly for me. I think it fits the flavor so well as well for both of the Draconic heroes that we saw this year, Syndra and Fang, where it rewards you for pledging your fealty to the Emperor, right? It basically asks that of you for this, strong payoff that, again, isn't absolutely egregious. It just is a good payoff. Floor is decent. You jump through hoops. You get a payoff. Big fan of this card.
Yeah. It's so interesting to me when I look at this card. I'm like, should this card be Royal? Royal Draconic?
Yeah, it is weird when Fi plays it, because you're like, wait, aren't you the rebellious one?
Yeah.
Like literally rebelling against the Emperor? But
I like this card. I mean, I have a love-hate relationship with this card. I think playing Syndra for a chunk of this meta, I didn't enjoy playing this card. I actively didn't really want it in my deck, but obviously, to your point, I think it is well balanced. I wonder if at any point during development this had 2 defense rather than 3, because in some ways I think sometimes you play with this card and you're like, this card is so powerful, and then other times you're like, if this card didn't block 3, it would actually be unplayable. I'm a fan.
It's already being cut from Syndra list, right? Like,
For
it
sure.
is contentious. Like, you're seeing 0 to 3 copies of this card in the Syndra list, and that's another thing I like about it, where it's like it also stresses your deck building if you want this sort of payoff, and I just like what it asks of you, and the payoff isn't like crazy where you feel like you're compelled to run this card.
Yeah.
So it's like you get to make those decisions around it.
All right. I'm going to... We'll go 1 for 1, right?
Mm-hmm.
Okay. My first card is Burn Bear. I like Burn Bear. I think this is a good printing this year. A wizard action that deals a big lump of arcane damage I think is very cool. And I think having utility to interact with something that you can't normally interact with, right? In terms of something that can make games feel really one-sided, I think is important. I think especially if they're going to bridge those super polarized matchups. I think, doing a second lump of big arcane damage. We might talk about that at some point potentially in this main topic. But Burn Bear personally, I think, is the kind of card that when it's limited in terms of when they really protect how impactful this card can be, I think it's good. I don't think you can have a lot of different versions of a card like this, but yeah, I think Burn Bear was a good printing this year. I think having no pitch value to help balance that is a very interesting design piece. I like that. So yeah, Burn Bear was a card that I quite like this year, both to play with, to play against, to see in the format, and I'm excited for the fact that I think it will have longevity in the game as well.
I was going to bring up the no pitch value as well as an interesting balancing point. I think, again, it comes back to it really... It has a strong drawback. When you draw 2 Burn Bears in the same hand, it just feels like the worst thing ever. Especially in a deck like Verdant's, where a lot of things cost 3, and then you have 2 cards that don't pitch at all and require you to have a blue somewhere else. Like the double Burn Bear hands and then 2 reds are actually just... You actually just like lose the game, it feels like. Oh, the whole turn cycle is like messed up. There is one aspect of Burn Bear. I did consider Burn Bear when I was looking at it, because I do agree with you. It is nice that they give tools like classes for their polarized matchups. I'm not a huge fan of the hand trappy nature of like Burn Bear and some of these other cards, where like Ripple Away, for example, where it's you get it at the right time and it like does something like very, very strong, and if you don't get it at the right time, it's like not as good. There's just one aspect of it why I didn't really quite make my list, but I think it's a solid pick for sure.
Cool. What's up next, Pankaj?
My next one is Hunter's Clave, which I was looking back at our list from last year, and I realized I had an assassin weapon on there last year as well, which is Becketing Mistblade, and Hunter's Clave to me just falls like very similarly in that category as well. Just like, it's not an overtly strong weapon, but you are, like, when it's sent at you, or like when it's being flicked at you, you are just slightly apprehensive. You're kind of like, ugh, I don't really want this to hit. But it is like annoying to deal with as well. But it's not like everything goes wrong if it does hit, sort of thing. And it just allows the assassin to like progress their game plan. And this is probably quite linked to the whole marked mechanic that you and I both enjoy very much. So the fact that this is like the tool that you use to like mark their opponents, I think it's just a solidly designed weapon. And I really like that the assassin weapons like Hunter's Clave and Beckoning Mistblade have this feel of like this. It's like expensive to swing, but because it's like so annoying and in a sense rewarding as well if it hits, it is, and difficult to block. It's very compelling, and it's landed in a very like unique spot, the assassin's weapon, where it's like it is the assassin weapons where it is really like their niche, where it does say dagger on it, but it's definitely not like a ninja dagger. It's not like a Kadachi or a kunai, and it's a weapon, but it's not like a warrior weapon as well. It's got its own thing where the on hit really, really matters and can change what the assassin's trying to do.
Yep.
I really enjoy designing this card.
I really like that it still has piercing as well. It still fits into the vibe and the aesthetic of assassin weapons as well. Well, we've got our first overlap, and this might be my favorite card of the year in my list as well, honestly, Pankaj. So, not that I had them in order, but Hunter's Clave for me is... I never thought I would have an assassin card in my... No, I mean, I knew I'd have one somewhere. I think I had one last year as well, or maybe I can't remember if I did. But, I'm not opposed to it. But I've enjoyed playing Assassin this year. I think Hunter's Clave is the card that's probably been the catalyst for that, honestly, and the marked mechanic has been the catalyst for that, of turning my view around on what Assassins are and my enjoyment of them. And so personal vibes, very high. In terms of design, very high on the design of this card. And in terms of its balance in the format, very high on that as well. So this kind of like ticks every single box for me in terms of what it's done this year. So I echo everything you said, and Hunter's Clave, a big tick from me.
Sweet.
Well,
all right, I'll move on to
you go to yours
one.
because that's we're 2 for 2. You took my thunder on that one a little bit.
I mean, you could start then.
You go.
Do you want to start? All right. My next one is Outside Interference. I think the flavor on this card, it just absolutely nailed the flavor of this card, right? Like the reviled hero is sort of cheating and getting outside interference. I also really enjoyed the deck building aspect of it, like what it asks from you on the deck building side. Like we've seen a bunch of these RKO lists putting like one of the big bullies in the side, one of the mocking blows in the side, and then one like something else like in the side, and these are the like a big bully tactics like in the side, and these are the targets for his outside interference. And because it blocks 0, you are sort of in a sense like forced a lot of the times to like grab it because it's blue, though it also is part of your resource base, but it's not an egregious level blue because it does have a cost in a sense where it blocks 0, but you can just swap it for a 3 block and like put it there. So it's just, I don't know. And then also I think the design space that it opens up in a sense, now like every reviled card can potentially be grabbed by this card, means that there's also just a very clear path for this hero to like get better and get upgrades as well. It doesn't feel egregious. It also overlaps a little bit with the brute identity of wanting to discard sixes. Just everything about this card is just so compelling.
Yeah, even being balanced with a no defense, you can still discard this and reveal a reviled attack action that does defend and put it into your hand right at instant speed. So the utility is there on this card. That it comes at a cost, obviously, because it takes something out of your inventory that potentially you wanted to use later on with another outside interference or use offensively. But I do like that balancing mechanic. Yeah, I like this card a lot. It was cool to see it on streams. I'm interested to see where the reviled brute goes in the future. I think RKO is certainly playable. Maybe a banless shakeup means that it's very much in contention for Road to National season, but it's very cool. I like it. I am going to match you with a reviled card of my own, and I was sort of, I wouldn't say like waffling between, but sort of working out where I would go on this. And you mentioned the card that I have, and that's Mocking Blow. I think Mocking Blow for me is similar to your point. I think I like the design of Reviled, and in terms of how that works with the booing mechanic and what that looks like. And Mocking Blow to me was probably the card that stood out the most in terms of when I was watching Flesh and Blood this year from a coverage standpoint, seeing this card start to have impact. Actually, even in like the World Premiere weekend as well, what Mocking Blow was doing. So, but particularly seeing RKOs and Lyeths play this Lyeths. Yes, sorry, I almost Lyeth playing this card. I think I chose this one because it goes across both decks, and I thought that was quite cool to see. Or potentially, depending on what the build is. But yeah, this kind of innocuous 0-for-1 attack that defends for red, defends with 3 at red, but can become a +4 and can have its attack. If RKO is playing this card, all of a sudden it's a red that comes in for 10 out of nowhere. This is the sort of card that I think is very cool. So, Super Slam's not a set that I spend a lot of time with this year. Obviously, it wasn't played in Limited in particular. But I think Mocking Blow is a very cool card. And I think, as much as we spoke about the flavor of the set last week and us being mixed on the flavor of it, I do think the cards themselves really lean heavily into the flavor of the set. And something like Mocking Blow is exactly the prime example of that, I think.
I really like Mocking Blow. I think it is a very strong indicator of the reviled mechanic of wanting to play from ahead. And I think it does sort of warp the way the game is played on both sides. Like, as you practice against the reviled heroes, both sides learn, sort of contrary to some of the fundamentals we've learned of Flesh and Blood, where you want to use your equipment early when you're against a reviled hero, and the reviled heroes want to use their equipment early as well because they want to make sure they have the life lead. And cards like Mocking Blow is kind of what caused that flip, which I think is very interesting. Is a very interesting dynamic. And also, Mocking Blow has the floor ceiling thing I was talking about, right? Where the floor is like the block 3, but a ceiling is not absolutely egregious. It's like 0-for-5, 0-for-6, which is like a strong ceiling, but it's not, I want to go complain about this on the internet, like level of thing. And you did need to make sure that you're ahead. But then also, I guess the other part of the floor is that you can get booed in other ways. Like, Lyeth, for example, just has in the hero ability, but like RKO, for example, can play like Villainous Pose or like whatever, all these other cards that like boo you, right? Mm-hmm. So you can use those as well to sort of offset the floor, and that comes back to the whole deck building aspect of it. I'm a big fan of this card as well. It didn't make my list, but it's pretty awesome. Cool.
All right, we got some nice agreements here. Where do you want to go next, Pankaj? You got 2 more to go.
Yeah, my next is Okana Scar Wraps. I love the tension this adds, like, to the game. So firstly, it, in a sense, does ask you to play Edge of Autumn. So it is restrictive in that sense, because this card is very strong. Because it's essentially a repeatable +1, right, throughout the rest of the game, on an arms piece that also blocks 2 and has blade break. So you're kind of like, okay, it does need to ask you something very serious on deck building and basically asks you to transform your weapon. So this is like the pair of Edge of Autumn with Okana Scar Wraps. But then what it gives you, just like, it's like there is the whole risk element of it. I just love the tension it adds to turn cycles for both players, right? Like, I'm on the ninja side, you're like, oh, do I dare activate this here? And on the other side, they're also thinking about like, oh, what if they activate a Scar Wraps on this thing? Can I answer it? Can I afford to like deal with this? Am I supposed to overblock here? Am I supposed to, I don't know, maybe bait them because I have to de-react or whatever? I just love the interaction that it just adds to pretty much like every turn cycle. in a way that's very ninja-esque, because it's just got that little +1. I just want that on hit. I don't really care about the damage. I want that on hit, which will lead to a whole bunch of other stuff. And then buying back the weapon as well. I think it was very flavorful on Ninja on the Ninja aspect of it. It's not. It's strong, but it's not broken. So I like where it landed is balance wise, and it's engaging and dynamic to play with on both sides.
I haven't seen much of this card. Honestly, when you said it, I was like, what on earth is that card? And was like looking it up. I forgot that, of course, this came out in the Ira Armory deck. This is Ira Armory deck?
Yes, this is Ira Armory deck.
Did this come out this year?
Which was... That came out this year. I did double check.
Okay.
Or rather, it was the other way around. I was looking through the product releases on the LSS page and be like, what came out this year specifically? Because it's hard to keep track, right, of all the Armory decks and everything. And I was like, oh, the Ira one came out this year. Is there anything in this that I really liked?
Yeah, because that's right. Sure. Ira as a hero came out at Worlds last year, was legal for the calling, but the Armory deck didn't come out until the start of this year. That makes sense.
Yes. Just like Aurora as well.
Yes.
Right? The Armory deck for Aurora came out earlier this year. But,
yeah. So, yeah, I mean, I don't have much to say about this card, honestly. I haven't really seen it much or played with it, but all the things you said make sense. I think it's a cool design at the very minimum for what I can see. So, yeah.
Yeah. This is from my stint of playing Katsu. I was like, wait, this card is actually sick.
Of course. Forgot about that. Your big Katsu gamer angle arc that you went on this year.
Actually, speaking of that, unbannings, yellow Bonds of Ancestry. Or blue Bonds of Ancestry. Okay. Let's go.
All right. Okay. I don't hate that. My next card is, I'm going to go to a bit of an interesting one, I guess, and a little pirate thief hero young. I'm going to go to Scurv Stowaway for my next card this year. A hero, but technically a card that comes in packs. It's not a token, so I'm gonna. I don't think this is cheating. I think this is fine. Scurv, I think
you're walking on thin ice, though.
No, I think I'm fine.
Carry on.
Scurv is I want to shout out again. We spoke about this, last week on the pod as well. But just the way that Scurv showed up in terms of at the world premiere was something that was just so unexpected, and something that I just have hats off to LSS and how they came up with that design, how they launched it on the day, how they balanced this to be a part of the limited format that was really interesting in terms of what Scurv would do for the draft format and for the less so the sealed format, but definitely the draft format. I think was very, very interesting. The flavor of it, I think, is awesome. I think it's very, very cool. I know we spoke about like the pirate rum thing, but I do think it's very cool. So yeah, I just wanted to, this is more of a vibe one for sure. Not one that, impacted my classic constructed play this year for sure, but it definitely impacted my limited play and just the overall impact this had on, and I think will have on the history of Flesh and Blood when we look back and go, remember that time that they released a hero on the day of the world premiere by putting it into packs and people just opened it and were like, what the heck is this? I think is so cool. So yeah, Scurv Stowaway is my fourth card. Not in any particular order, of course, remember, but yeah, Scurv Stowaway.
Yeah, and it was in that pirate set as well, and suddenly the pirate ship had this one thief like in the what's it called where they have all the cargo?
The hold.
The hold. Yeah. The hold. Yeah. One thief in there like just chilling, and we found him like the day of the set. Yeah, I think it was very cool flavor wise. All right, my best card. I think this one does take the cake for me as the card. Yeah, it is. Yeah, it's slightly higher than the others. Hasn't seen a lot of play, but I've been trying to make this work for.
It's gonna be a Marlin card. Let's go.
It's a Ranger card, yeah.
Yeah.
But it does see play in Riptide. There's certain like aggro builds of Riptide that definitely play this card. It is very strong there. It's Return Fire. Big fan of this card. Right. Same thing, floor ceiling, right? The floor is like a block 4, which you can't be like upset about. But because it's a block card, you can't arsenal it. So the floor is significantly lower than something like a Sink Below, for example. Especially in a deck that is trying to draw cards on their own turn, right? Because you can't like arsenal this card. But in the ceiling is a 0 for 7 that also helped you load. So it's very satisfying. And I think what I really like about this card is the synergies in a sense. Like the sort of, it almost moves Ranger to a bit of a different direction. Like the reason it's so strong in Riptide, and maybe not as strong in other Rangers, is because Rangers always want to have a card in the arsenal already, right? They want the arrow there, or they want something that helps them load like in the arsenal. But Return Fire sort of asks you to have an empty arsenal. And so what it sort of synergizes with, in a sense, and why it's strong in Aggro Riptide is you put a trap in there, and then you can actually empty your arsenal on your opponent's turn because you play your trap. All you can do is block return fire first, play your trap on the next thing, and now your arsenal's empty, and then you can put the arrow there. Obviously, there's Trench as well, but Trench doesn't feel good because Trench is pretty bad. But if you can actually profitably use your arsenal to empty it and then load your arrow and get +3 on it, it feels very satisfying to pull that off. Also, if they ever give Marlin a better headpiece, if they ever let us not play Crown of Dominion and you get to do cool things with Crown of Providence with this card as well, that's a very, very fun thing to do. You Providence block with return fire, empties your arsenal in a way that's profitable, and then you get to load your arrow as well. And again, the payoff isn't crazy. The payoff isn't, okay, I just won the game on the spot. But it is very satisfying to pull off, and it's very strong because it does ask quite a bit of you, because the floor it's not sync below. You can't arsenal this card. So yeah, return fire for me.
Would not have guessed that you can have return fire as your favorite or your best card of the year for 2025.
Yeah,
that's for sure. Mm-hmm. I mean, I don't have a lot to say. I mean, one thing I did think was interesting is that you spoke about like hoops to jump through. This doesn't have heaps of hoops, but it doesn't have no hoops either, which was interesting for it to be.
Well, it does because of the Ranger class, because your arsenal is like, and that's again like what I really like about it. It's like it does sort of create a bit of tension with like the class identity in a sense, but it's also flavorful for the class identity at the same time. Yeah,
interesting. I mean, my only experience of this card is this being absolutely broken in limited, probably the biggest bomb in the limited format. That's my only experience with this card, so I've hated this card this year, to be honest. But I have not had an experience with it in Classic Constructed, so I can only take the limited side of things. But it's funny that your number one card is probably a card that I've only had a negative experience with so far this year.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, in limited, obviously, it's insane.
Yeah.
But in CC, it's a puzzle to try and solve, and it's very satisfying to pull off. Because at the same time, again, tension of the Ranger class, they kind of have a lot of pumps, or if you have a lot of traps as well, sometimes you draw return fire and you just don't have an arrow to even load with it.
Yeah.
You know? Like, you're just holding traps and pumps, for example. So it does ask quite a bit from you from the deck building side to get the 0-for-7 with a free load, which is a very strong payoff as well. Mm-hmm. So I like it.
Fair enough. All right,
what's yours?
My final card is... I just did not think I would have two Ranger cards on this list. It's absolutely insane. But my last is Kiss of Death.
Assassin cards. I was like, what was the first Ranger card? Okay, no.
Did I say Ranger?
Assassin cards.
Oh,
you said Ranger.
Oh, I'm still...
the brain rot's affecting you as well.
Yeah, clearly I'm never
Soon.
I mean, I would have a Ranger card on there, but I just... there's no Ranger cards I've particularly enjoyed or thought were impactful this year, unfortunately, for Ranger.
Hey, I converted you to Assassin. I can convert you to Ranger.
I'm not sure you converted me to Assassin, but the reason I enjoyed Assassin was definitely because of Slippy. Anyway.
Yeah. Okay, so Kiss of Death.
Kiss of Death, I think, is a very interesting card in terms of being an attack action, being a dagger. I think printing a weapon type line on a action card is just very interesting, very flavorful with the Assassin class as well. So I was very excited to see what that would be. I think the way that this ends up playing out with having stealth on it and the interactions it has with different parts of Assassin's identity, but also what it does with things like flick knives, obviously, but not the only thing. Flick knives isn't the only thing. You know, there's obviously the dagger pumps and things like that as well. So I just think Kiss of Death is such an important card for what Assassin is as a class. Has had great impact this year. I think has been a pretty well balanced card, and also a fun card to play with. So not my favorite of the five. I think that might go to the Hunter's Clave just by a hair, but Kiss of Death, the card I've definitely enjoyed this year.
I like Kiss of Death as well. I was thinking about it when I was making my list. I think what I really like about it is, well, firstly, the stealth mechanic. I don't think we've really discussed this, but I do like the stealth mechanic for the Assassins and how different it feels across the different Assassins, like how all of them use it very differently in a way that's like unique to them, but it's the same keyword that doesn't have any meaning on its own, but it's very much just how the other Assassins use it. And Kiss of Death sort of takes it to the next level because it's stealth, but it also gives all the Assassins like dagger payoffs. And I think that's very exciting about the card. And I do agree with you. It's like, it's well balanced. T-Tox is a little bit, weird, but it is well balanced.
That card wouldn't be my
favorite.
favorite.
Sort of like, just like extra damage, and it has a flick knives. So I like Kiss of Death too.
Cool. All right, it is time to get on to the worst cards of 2025, and let's rip through some honorable mentions first. I'm gonna share mine, Pankaj, quickly. I have 3 honorable mentions that didn't make my list. First is Authority of Attire. I think this card is... I just don't love printing a Fable that has such an impact on the format. So Authority of Attire, I would put in the bin personally. Hunt's End, I just think that for me, Fang has had... It's not my favorite hero. I was vocal about this last week. I really don't love the way that Fang... I like the idea of Fang. The way that it is in execution, I don't love. And I think Hunt's End is kind of a perfect representation of the thing where I'm like, oh, that seems cool. And then in practice, I'm like, it doesn't feel great to play with and never feels great to play against. And then my last one is Light Up the Leaves. Didn't make my list in the end. I'm interested to see what the impact of this card is in the future. But Light Up the Leaves is not a card that I was happy got printed this year.
It's so interesting that you have Light Up the Leaves there, but then Burn Bear was in your favorites.
Yep.
I have a question for you. If Burn Bear wasn't printed, would Light Up the Leaves make your honorable mentions for the worst?
Probably. I don't think printing a red 6 arcane earth damage spell was a good choice personally.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, we were seeing Burn Bears get cut from lists at the end of the year. You know, like but Light Up Leaves is just an auto 3 include because the card is just busted.
Yeah, I think maybe the part of Light Up the Leaves that maybe I don't enjoy the most is, again, the hand trappy nature of it. Like in the mirror, sometimes you just randomly lose because they Light Up the Leaves on a turn, you try to combo them. And it's like, okay. Cool. My honorable mentions for the worst cards. I have Authority and Riches, like sort of as like a little package. Exactly what you said. Like super impactful Fables. Yeah. I mean, already not a big fan of like one-offs that can potentially like change the game. I mean, these don't change the game. I guess Riches maybe sometimes can actually. Like it actually makes a difference how early you see Riches if you're playing Kasai, for example, in a matchup where you need to raise an army. So yeah, don't like that. Also don't like it for the pricing, which is definitely sort of going a bit meta. We're going outside like gameplay reasons, but I'm going to bring that up. It just shoots up the price points of these decks. Like Gravy is still like, I don't know, like $1,000-something deck, mostly off the back of like these Fables, which I'm not a fan of. And then the other honorable mentions are Chum and Sawbones, again, in like a little package of the thing. All right. Just for kind of obvious reasons.
I had a card that was like on the edge of my list, and I was like, is it an honorable mention or is it a card I'm actually going to talk about? And since you've mentioned it, I'm just going to get straight into it. It's probably the 5th on my list, the lowest of the list, but I'm, again, not ordering these. Sawbones. I think I like allies, and I want allies to be a part of the game, but I want them to feel good to play and play against. And Sawbones often feels like, I didn't see Sawbones in this game, so I wasn't able to do X, or my opponent had multiple Sawbones, so I wasn't able to do X. It's polarizing in so many ways, and I just don't love that. So you mentioned in your honorable mentions, it's on my list. I think I just want to point out, I'm not putting an ally on there because I don't like allies and didn't like Gravy and its allies. I just particularly took offense with Sawbones having 2 health, having this prevention ability, stacking in multiples, and being so impactful.
I need to clarify something. I've realized that, I think maybe I have projected that I just hate board state and allies like as a whole in general.
Maybe.
But I am going to say I have enjoyed 2 implementations of allies in this game. And I can actually pinpoint exactly why I like these implementations and why I don't mind seeing them again. But Gravy's not one of them. The 2 implementations of allies that I've liked are actually Dromai's Dragons and Prism's Angels. Mm-hmm. And I think I mentioned this on the pod before, but I actually think Dromai was balanced. If you just brought Dromai, but you cut Rake the Embers, I actually think she would be a very well-balanced illusionist and very, very compelling and engaging on both sides. And the reason why I like her implementation of allies and also Prism's Angels is because there's more than one way to deal with them. Like why I don't like Spectra and why I don't like Gravy's allies is because there's only one way to deal with them. But Dromai's allies, for example, you could pop them or you could attack them. Prism's Angels, you can attack them or you can attack face because they all have ward. Enigma's ones were also terrible because there's only one way to deal with them. You can only attack face. And I think that just makes it so polarizing. It makes it so narrow the strategies that you can employ and the decks that can deal with it. Whereas like decks like Dromai, for example, the way a Guardian dealt with it was very different from the way a Ninja dealt with it because there were these multiple axes that you could deal with it. And same for Prism's Angels. So I actually do like those implementations of allies. I don't like Spectra, I don't like just Ward State, and I don't like Gravy's ones because there's only one thing you can do against it, and then that means that the number of heroes and decks I can deal with it are just so limited. So I'm going to continue on in this ally train thing because I do have an ally in my 5,
go on.
which isn't Chum or Sawbones. It's actually Rigor Mortis because I think that is the most. It's the biggest problem I have with like these allies things is that when there's only one way to deal with it, and that way is basically incredibly inefficient for almost every deck in the game to deal with. I'm just like, this is just not okay. This is just so egregious in like what it's asking everyone to be able to deal with. And because Rigor Mortis has 1 health and attacks for 6, it's a must kill ally that basically only ninjas can deal with in a way that's efficient. Whereas like something like even Chum, I'm just like, okay, like, you know, like there are decks that can like deal 6, and it's like, it always feels bad. That's why it's my honorable, of course. And Sawbones like sort of asks you to deal 3 to it, which is still a little bit more sort of palatable, where I'm like, okay, I send a hammer at it or something. I'm still inefficient, but it's not like Rigor Mortis where it's like it's freaking 1 health, and there's just, unless I literally have a kunai or a Kodachi or a Phoenix Flame or Verdant's Ping, or if I'm online, there's like nothing I can do to deal with this that feels good. So yeah, for me, Rigor Mortis is the ally that made my list.
I like Chum
over Chum and Sawbones.
Yeah, I personally like Chum. I can see, the Sawbones Rigor Mortis like double down is really tough, I think, and was a big part of what made Gravy so strong. Just that just be able to be an aggro deck effectively, right? Because it's just the sheer amount of damage they're able to do. Like Swabby I really like as well, because of the investment you have to put into a card like that to get the damage out of it. So yeah, I can see that.
And then the 3 health. Yeah, the 3 health sort of makes it a little bit more okay, like when you clear it. You're like, okay, fine, I have to like dedicate a thing here. You can sort of, and like those kind of cards, you can sort of maybe deck build around as well. You're like, you can put Outed in your list or some other 0-for-3 Gorgon if your hero class has access to it. Like for Marlin, for example, we're like running maybe Red Swell or like Red Tipple, just like deal with his 3 health allies. But then when it's like the 1 health thing, and you're just like, dude, this is just get out of here.
Let's I'm gonna finish my double down on Necromancer, I think, and my next card is Dead Threads. I think this card I was not super excited to see printed. I think, you know, I like cards that are powerful. Don't get me wrong, I love powerful cards. I think they're cards I want to see in the game, but I don't necessarily love when they completely enable everything a deck does, and they're also powerful. I think it's too much in my eyes, and I think Dead Threads fell into that exactly, of a kind of like, it almost felt like a card that had to be printed to make the deck powerful, as opposed to a card that was printed to help enable, and it did both. It enabled and it pushed the power, right? And I think that's just one too many things. I think you have to do either. You know, look at other equipment in the game, and it's like either you have a card that is enabler, or it's a power driver. So something like Savage Sash, I think, is like a power driver, right? But it's not necessarily an enabler for the deck. Whereas something like Scabskins for Rhinar, I'm just using brute examples, might be the enabler, right? But maybe not necessarily the power driver behind it. So I think, you know, Crown of Seeds is another one that's fallen into this camp before. I think of its power and it's an enabler, and for Oldhim, and I don't love it personally. I'm guessing it's on your list. I don't know. Is it?
No, it was close. It was close.
Okay.
But yeah, I think also the fact that it's just unlimited, right? Like, I compared to like Blood Spattered Vest, which almost made my top 5 favorite cards of the year. Where it's like, yeah, it sort of enables certain things, but then there's a limit on it. It's like, okay, you can use it 3 times, and then once you get to the 3rd one, you also lose the block value on it. Whereas Dead Threads is like, all right, the entire rest of the game, you have a tunic counter every turn of the game, and then it also blocks 1 at the end of it. Yeah. And it's like, why? It's not traverse levels, but it gives me some level of like traverse vibes, where I'm like, this is so strong, and then it also blocks, and it's like, why? Like, it didn't need to be like this. And then the fact that it's unlimited is always gives you the 1 resource, can give him the opponent's turn as well, and it combos with your quick dodge flexes or your, I don't know, you know, prevent arcane or something. It's like, brother,
push too much on one.
It's not on my list, but I agree with it.
Okay, I'm honestly surprised.
I'll move on.
I'm surprised it's on your list.
Yeah, I do have another Necromancer card.
Okay,
and spoiler, this is the last of the Necromancer cards on my 5. Chart the High Seas. I mean, when I was talking about like floors and ceilings, I think this card just breaks it. Like this card's ceiling is insane. What it is, for the floor being like as high as it is, right, which is like a blue block 3. Also, I mean the fact that Compass sort of basically insulates you from like a super brick basically from this card, kind of like removes the floor of it, where it's like, okay, you hit 2 reds off the top. It's like kind of you don't really get that. Also, just the way the deck is built, like you're not gonna get that. But then the ceiling is like, okay, it's like they didn't even use a card because they got to pitch. Like the blue from the top gets pitched, so they didn't even like use a card from the hand because that card effectively got to pitch. But then after it's also a blue that hit the yard, and then it's also an ally that hit the yard for you, so it also was a discard outlet, and then it also gave you a gold. It feels like a lot of games are won or lost based on the outcome of this card, which goes against like sort of what I was talking about earlier, like my favorite cards. Like, I like when the ceilings are like good, but not I won the game because of this. And Chart the High Seas though is like, there's so many games. I'm sure everyone's had it where it's like they went back alley break line, pitch off the top, and discard the Sawbones or something. Okay, and then they just win the game because they got the extra action point, they got the gold, they got an extra ally, and it's like, and then that's a blue that played for the turn as well, and they got a pitch. So they effectively didn't even use a card from their hand, and they got this like crazy payoff. I'm just like, why is this card a thing?
I'm okay with powerful cards. I think that this one is, like you say, it's very pushed, right? I have in contrast, the reason I guess I had Dead Threads as opposed to a card like this is I think, you have to draw and play this card, and to your point, yes, you can get the value back. I'm okay with some number of these, but I do think this one is particularly pushed. But also, it does give you deck building restraints, which I do like to a degree in terms of, this card can whiff, and if you build your deck in a particular way to have higher rates of whiffs and things like that. Yeah, but I agree.
I do like that aspect of it. I do agree with you. Like I said, I do like when the cards sort of ask you to make deck building choices around them. Big fan of that, but the ceiling of this is way too high.
Okay, my next card is Skyward Serenade. This card can. This card is. I was not excited to see this card in terms of when it came out. Of course, we know there's some history to this card. So, you know what? I thought about not putting this on my list in terms of we know that this wasn't an intended printing in this exact form, that there was maybe a bit of a misprint on this card in the end, and how powerful it wasn't necessarily intended by LSS. But you know what? At the end of the day, it got printed, and it's a card that we had this year, and I think it completely pushed Aurora over the edge for a good 3-month period into her Living Legend, and I think there's no if but or maybe about it. So for me, Skyward Serenade, I think, was a card that I didn't enjoy seeing. It felt like the times where my opponents, drew 2 of these in a game and were able to just stack up massive turns and massive effects. The flexibility of this card is just insane. It just, for me, too pushed, this card.
That's fair. Yeah. Don't really have much more to say on that one. Yeah.
Just a reminder that the Aurora Armory deck came out this year.
Yeah. Yeah. It is, obviously the misprint was very unfortunate. But yeah, the way it ended up was just like yellow block 3 that does a 0/4 go again, also non-attack and an attack. It's like, yeah, okay, it's a bit nuts.
Yeah. Where are we going?
My next one is Kabuto of Imperial Authority.
Interesting.
Like, just why? Like, just warriors are already down bad, and then it also ends up being like every warrior needs to put this in their deck. Now, this is like the opposite of like imposing a interesting deck building restriction on you. This just says if you want to play warrior, you have 79 cards because you kind of like have to play this because it's just against another warrior. If you have this and they don't, or vice versa, it's like the person who has this just basically will win. And it's just like, why? Why? Like, what? It's also only good against like other warriors pretty much, except specifically like Syndra because of Wrath of Retribution. Other than that, this card doesn't even do very much. I remember when it came out, people were like, oh my god, maybe we can like stuff a Mirror Guy swing or something, because like Mirror Guy is like a weapon. And then like, no, that anyone can just like play around it. It's just like, it's just so... Why do warriors need like a hate card against other warriors that are that is this strong, and it doesn't apply anywhere else? It's just I don't like this card.
That's interesting.
Like this is I'm just upset that it's like printed that it exists.
This card almost made my honorable mentions for best cards. I think this card is interesting, but I can understand what you mean against other warriors and the deck building restraint of like you just have to play this card. But I do think this card was interesting this year. Actually, you know what? No, you're right. This is. I did think about this more as a reason this didn't make my list. It is so one-dimensional.
Yeah,
I'm on board.
It's not interesting. It's just
You've convinced me. My next card, Pankaj, is Wrath of Retribution. I think if we want to talk about cards that have the wrong end of ceilings and flaws, I think Wrath of Retribution is definitely that card. You want off the back of Kabuto as well, if you want to talk about that. But this is a card that I think, when it is at its ceiling, which is very often what you're aiming to set up, it's just disgusting, right? Sort of one card, or even if you're using your boots, I guess 2-card, if you want to call it that, 11s is just ridiculous. So, and the constraints to get to it are not that big. And then on the flip side, when this card is not relevant in a game, it has no impact. It's like, oh, I drew my legendary, but in this game, I have no daggers left now, or my opponent has Kabuto, so this card's just kind of nothing. Which, I'm glad that there is some downside to this card, but I'd rather just have this card be more balanced in the middle, to be honest. So, yeah, I think a card that honestly didn't particularly enjoy playing with in Syndra, because your games often felt like, oh, I lost that game, but I won that game where I drew Wrath sort of thing, and it never feels great for your opponents, I don't think. So, yeah, that's on my list.
That's on my list as well. So we have an overlap there for the 5 worst Wrath Retribution. I mean, yeah, I echo everything you said. I just hate that... okay, so... I enjoy Syndra's identity as like an aggro deck that sort of puts pressure on you every turn. It isn't like aggro decks we've seen in the past, like, back in like Out of War days, where it's like all around like one massive spike turn. Or like a Mask of the Pouncing Lynx Ninja, for example, or even like Katsu, where I guess it's a Lynx Ninja, where it's like, okay, they start playing around trying to set up like a 30 damage turn, and then after bleed you out from there. Like, I like that Syndra is like an aggro deck, not the like that we've seen in the past, where her numbers... Like, she doesn't have a crazy spike turn aside from Wrath of Retribution.
Yeah.
But she does ask you constantly to be able to, like, block her. And she's vulnerable to disruption. So I think it's a very unique identity. But then Wrath of Retribution just kind of breaks that. And it's like, okay, no, now she does have this one spike turn, which is absolutely insane. And also, yeah, it's like, there's games where I've literally lost because it's like, I gave them, like, that one turn cycle and they had Wrath. If they had any other card, it's like... If it's just another, even 0 for 4 or 0 for 5, for example, it's like, I would have been fine. But because it's 0 for 9 or 11, it's like, okay, that's why I lost. And vice versa. It's like you're on the Syndra side, and yeah, I guess you only won because of that specific card. Or you lost because the Syndra opponent found it and you didn't. And then it's a one-off as well, so it's impossible to even, like... So it again, it's the antithesis of interesting deck-building choices, because it's a one-off, so you can't even do anything to, like, build around it further or anything. You just hope to draw it. It's very... frustrating.
Yes. Okay. I mean, glad we agree on that. My last card is a bit of a... I guess it's making a point in some ways. Light Up the Leaves wasn't on my list, but this card is, and it's Warcry of Bellina. And the reason this card is on my list is because we get cards like Light Up the Leaves to really push a hero and archetype in a slot, and then we get this card printed. And I'm not a Bolton player, but I'm angry for all the Bolton players out there. And I think if we're going to be printing cards like Light Up the Leaves, why can't we print a better card than this for our Light Warrior? I think it's kind of egregious, honestly. A card that just... you could have even... I guess, flirted with putting in the gold equipment for Olympia, but at least that, I think, is somewhat interesting. This card, I don't think is interesting. I don't think the effect's interesting. I don't think it does anything for our Light Warrior. And, yeah, I was just disappointed with this card wholeheartedly, especially when we see a card like Light Up the Leaves.
Warriors were done quite dirty. Despite the fact that there was one set that had a warrior in it. And there was a card which I'm going to bring up which didn't make my list but was on my 10, which I like shortlisted down. Escalate Bloodshed. Just again, another like warrior hate card in the expansion slot for like no reason. Like, what is this? This isn't helping like warrior at all. Like, why is this here? Warcry Bologna, like Kabuto of Imperial Authority as well. It's just... It's very frustrating. I remember looking at Escalate Bloodshed and be like, oh, Gravy draws a bunch of cards, right? Maybe I can play this against Gravy and like stop them from drawing, except it'll just blow up at the end of the turn because they don't attack with a weapon. And it's just like, what is this? Like, what is the design here that warriors are good against other warriors and they have all these tools but like nothing else? I don't get it.
We got to balance the good with the bad. Pankaj, what's your last card?
All right, my last card is actually another Ranger card, and it's just... I think you've probably been able to hear like my frustration of these classes and heroes that I really like not getting the support, or like just getting these bad cards for some reason. And this is very much that. This is Rusty Harpoon. Just... Gosh, this card just upsets me. Like, why? I think maybe it's like a limited consideration. That's why it doesn't attack for 2. But if you just look at every other arrow that's blue and costs 0... they all attack for 2 and then have an effect. Now, this is a harpoon, so I guess that's its effect. But why does it only attack for 1? Like, what is this? Like, I think even if it attacked for 2, I'm not sure if I put it in my Marlin list, but at least I'll, like, think about it. But this is just, like, it's very, like, Escalate Bloodshed territory. I was like, why is this here? Like, what is... And in the meanwhile, Gravy is getting all his Gravy cards in High Seas, right? So, like,
I'm surprised to see this card in your list. I think this is purely a limited card. And to your point about it doesn't attack for 2, I mean, it's a harpoon. I think you kind of nailed it. That's why it offsets it. But I agree. Like, what I would have liked to have seen is where's this, like, the rare version of this, for instance? Where's the, No,
but like, it's like drill shot, for example, and searing shot attack for 2, and they have an additional effect, right? So, like, why is this not attack for 2 and its additional effect is that it's a harpoon?
Too good and limited, probably.
Like,
honestly, that's my...
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, so I'm just like, I don't...
But you want to construct a playable Rusty Harpoon is basically what you want. You want less Rusty Harpoon.
Zero cost...
Yeah.
Yes, I want a 0 cost harpoon that I can actually put in my Marlin deck.
That's fair. You want slightly Rusty Harpoon.
Yeah. Mildly polished.
Yeah.
Rusty harpoon.
Fair.
Yeah.
All right, Pankaj. I think that does it, right? That's our 5 best, 5 worst. And we had 2 overlaps, 1 in each of the categories. So I'm just going to say by default, those are our Arsenal Pass best and worst of the year. Hunter's Clave best and Wrath of Retribution worst. I mean,
yeah, all right.
That's where we agreed on a card, so I think we have to go with it. I'm interested to see if we'll see some of these design learnings, some of the things we loved, like Hunter's Clave, for instance, Mocking Blow, and also I forget the name of the Majestic that you spoke about that goes and gets a
Return Fire.
Yeah, no, the card that grabs it from outside.
Outside Interference.
Outside Interference. I think those cards are very interesting. On the flip side, some of the allies, Wrath of Retribution, cards we didn't necessarily love as much. Will we learn from those in 2026? We'll have to see. But Pankaj, that has been episode 243 of Arsenal Pass, our best and the worst of the year. We've got some more retrospectives to finish out the year, so make sure you keep listening to Arsenal Pass to round out 2025. Thanks to all of our Arsenal Pass patrons, and until the next episode, we'll see you next time. Hello, Arsenal Pass patrons, and welcome. Oh, wrong one. We've already done Patreon.
Leave that in though. That'll be so funny.
I'll put that in the end. Oh gosh, one of those mornings. It's too early for me. Hello, everyone, and welcome back to God damn it!
I was going to ask what time is it for you, but sorry, yeah, just carry on.
It's 10 to 7 in the morning, and I haven't been to the gym this morning. Usually, the gym wakes me up. All right.